will discuss today the clinical trials or the rest of the clinical trials. So our projections are our topic today is projection management. So the projection management, we have the functional level and the job title. The functional level, we have the project level, the study level, the site or the country level. So about the project level, so the job title is a project manager and it called the clinical project management. And we have the study level, so we called him as study manager, or the job title is called the study manager or the global lead monitor. And then we called all this operation is a study management. And we have the site or the country level, so we can say country leader or local lead monitor, and the whole operation is called the site management. Also the job title monitor or CRA, CTA, and the site management. Okay, so the clinical project management, we have here assistant, the line management manager, project manager, project manager, project manager, study manager, and then the global lead CRA, global lead CRA, global lead CRA, and also line manager like this. So it's managing a project, and the project it composed of the several studies on a global level. Managing a project, a single study on the global level, coordinating support for CRA for a single study. Like managing a project, several study, we called him project manager. The project manager is responsible for the project that is composed of the several study, and the study manager is managing the project that is composed of the single study. And we have the global lead CRA that coordinating support for CRA for a single study. So we come to the site management. Okay, so we wanted to know what is a site management. We want to know what is all things about the site management. So the site management, we have the global sponsor company. Okay, and the global sponsor company that responsible for the protocol for the data management is maybe we can see the leader here. We called him a global sponsor company, and we said before that the sponsor could be a person, could be organization, could be a hospital, could be anything. Okay, so this is a global sponsor company that is responsible for the, we have said that before, that write the protocol, manage the protocol, and manage also the data. And then there is a local sponsor, or we can say it's CRO. There is a local sponsor, local sponsor, local sponsor, local sponsor, and we call them CRO, that is responsible for contact to the site monitoring. So responsible of two things: contact to the site, you have a contact to the site, and also monitoring. And then is come to the clinical research site and the investigator, and look like the investigator is a physician or a dentist, and he's responsible for the treatment for the patients, inclusions of the patient, and the treatment is the direct responsible of the patients and collecting the data from the patients. And then the protocol subjects, we call them as a patients, and this is the participation. And that's exactly what is the site management. Again, we have the global sponsor company that's responsible for the protocol and the data management, local sponsors, or we can say CRO, that responsible to contact to the site monitoring, and then we have the clinical research sites or investigator, inclusion of the patients and the treatment, and then the patients for the participations. What is the problems, or what are the problems that is associated with the site management? Uh, or we can say the responsibility, because he said assure compliance of a site to the protocol and regulation, assure equality of the data, select and maintain productivity of the site, maintain maybe the causes or main causes of delay in a clinical trial, contract and budget negotiations, patient recruitment and enrollment. So I think we can say the address or the title of this paragraph is wrong, but we can say the responsibility of the site management. I can say the first thing, assure compliance of the site to the protocol and regulation. It's important to think or to make sure that everything in the site is adherence to the protocol and the regulation. This is the first thing. So they are assure compliance of the protocol and regulation, the site to the protocol and regulation. And the other thing is assurance of equality of the data, and everything that is associated with equality is the responsibility of the sponsor. And other thing is select and maintain the productivity of the site, like we maintain the productivity of the site. But the main causes of delay in a clinical trial, what are the causes of delay in a clinical trial? The contract negotiations, budget negotiations, enrollment of the subject and recruitment of the patient. So these are the problems, or we can say the causes of the delay in a clinical trial. So contract and budget negotiation, patient recruitment and enrollment. Selection of a trial site by sponsor. So we can say two things about these things. That we know that the responsibility of the sponsors is selection of the trial site. So the selection of the trial site is the main responsibility of the sponsor. Obtaining the investigator institution's agreement to conduct the trial in compliance with the GCP and according to the protocol, compliance with the procedures for the data recording reporting, permission to monitor, audit and inspect site, returning all the trial related essential documents until the sponsor said that they no longer needed. All these are, we can say, the responsibilities of the sponsor. But is it obtaining the investigators or institutions agreement too? We should make sure that conduct the trial in compliance. We make that the conducting of the trial, which is responsibility of the investigator, is in compliance with the GCP regulation and the protocol. Compliance with the procedures for data recording and reporting, like collections of these data, permission to monitor, audit and inspect the site, returning all the trial related essential documents until the sponsor said they are no longer needed. Okay, and then we have a site activation, IT, drug supply, training, contract with the site, approval of the trial and the site by regulation, and which regulation that we need their approvals, like the health authorities and institutional review boards. Study conduct at the site. Study conduct at the site, patient inclusion and exclusion criteria, treatment and data collection. And then we say that the close out. So the site management, again, we have, this is the site, this is the start, we can say the trial setup, and we know, again, we also discussed this before, but we want to know more about that. This is the start, this is the conduct of the trial, and this is the close out. So the site, the first one is a trial setup. So we have the site selection and the site activations. All the site selection and the site activation, it's under the trial setup. So with the site selection, the best site for the trial selected. What is the best site for the trial? And then the site activation, enabling the site, like we use IT, we use a drug supply, we use a training, and then contract with the site, and then trial and site is approved by the regulation, health authorities and institutional review board. And then the study conduct at the site, which is responsibility of the investigator, patient inclusion, patient treatment, collecting of the data, and all these responsibility of the investigator, and then the close out. So as you see here, this is the responsibilities of the investigator about the start, qualification and agreement, adequate resources, communications with the IRPIEC. This is under the site activation because it's a part of here, and visit the contract with the site and enabling the site. Okay, under the correct conduct, informed consent of the trial subject, randomization procedures and unblinding, responsibility in the patient treatment, compliance with the protocols, records and report, progress reports, safety reporting, premature termination or suspension of the trial. All these are responsibility of the investigator. And then the close out final reports by the investigator. So all these are the responsibilities again of the investigator. Compensation to the subjects and investigator. Insurance, cost of the treatment in the case of the trial related injury. Subjects are only paid in phase 1 trial when we use volunteers. Okay, so compensation to the subjects and the investigator. The first one is assurance, cost of the treatment in the case of a trial related injuries. Subjects are only paid in the phase 1 trial. And then we discuss the monitoring. Ensure a trial is conducted, recorded and reported according to the protocol GCP and the standard operating procedures. Monitoring the plan, like strategy, method, responsibilities and requirements. On-site monitoring, centralized monitoring, report evaluation of accumulating data, combination of on-site and centralized monitoring. This is all about something which is called the monitoring. So the first one, ensure the trial is conducted, recorded and reported, adherence to the protocol GCP and standard operating procedures. Monitoring a plan. So we have a plan that is composed of a strategy, methods, responsibilities and requirements. We have on-site monitoring and centralized monitoring. Okay, like on-site monitoring, we collecting and we evaluating the data persons in person, and centralized monitoring, that we use a video call or something, remote evaluation of accumulating data. And we have sometimes combination on-site and centralized monitoring. There is something is called risk-based monitoring, and that we mean exactly identification, assessment, monitoring and mitigation of risk potentially affecting the quality or the safety of the study. Source data verification based on the risk. Again, what is the risk-based monitoring? Identification, assessment, monitoring and mitigation of the risk potentially affecting the quality or safety of a study. And source data verification based on the risk. Clinical Research Associate, and we see the Clinical Research Associate, CRA. The responsibilities of CRA, the first one, monitoring of a trial, managing of a trial, appointed by sponsor. There is a source data verification, source data review, soft skills required like interpersonal relationship, teamwork, information analysis, problem solving. So the first one, monitoring of the trials, how that can be happen by validation, review and checking, and then control. Managing of the trial, information, advice, training, that's been support. Appointed by sponsor, source data verification, source data review, soft skills required, interpersonal relationship, teamwork, information analysis, problem solving. And then the data manager. What is the responsibilities of the data manager? The first one, central data review and data coding. And then we have the clinical trial team responsible for timely delivery of a high quality clinical study report. Global clinical leader that responsible for the medical leadership. Clinical trial head ensures timeline, budget, and the standards are met. Trial data manager development of case report form. Trial statistician or clinical pharmacology statistician randomization. Safety leader drug safety and epidemiology. Global lead CRA monitoring. Drug supply manager and medical writer, biomarker clinical scientist, imaging operations scientist to provide support for MRT, CT scan, and other things. So the site management again, the other topic. So we have a core team and we have also extended team. So the core team, global clinical leader, study manager, trial data manager, trial statistician, and regularity manager. But all these things extended team, like clinical trial budget manager, trial DM programmer, trial statistical programmer, brand safety leader, global lead CRA, medical writer, drug supply manager, biomarker clinical scientist, imaging operations scientist, clinical pharmacological experience, and region medical advisors, SM Japan. And now we go to something so important, which is known as the standard operating procedures, which is known as SOP, required by GCP, GMP, GTP, and GLP. Identify person responsible for each task, describes action to be completed, training of staff, monitoring of site performance, ensures all tasks are performed according to the regulation, standardizations of the task to minimize variations, and that is what we call them as consistency, guide for a new or temporary staff, structure that is composed of head, purpose, responsibilities, instructions of procedures, references, and appendix. So the header composed of the title, dates of original, revision, approval, and then the purpose, responsibilities, instructions of procedures, references, appendix. And the appendix is the source document and the case report form. So identify the procedures, make a draft of SOPs, and validate the process, finalize the SOPs, approve the SOPs, implement like a train and assess the competence, monitor the process, and then again validate the process. Then we have something is called investigator site file. These are the components of the investigator site file: study protocol and amendments, investigator brochure, approval, sub-investigator qualifications like CV, GCP, medical license, contract, delegation log, standard operating procedures, training log, deviation log, unapplied key, communication CRA, screening log, patient information and informed consent, temperature log, drug accountability log, shipment log, drug dispensation log, and case report form. And then we discussed the trial site team. The trial site team, so we have the principal investigator treats the patients, and we have also the sub investigator, okay, and then we have the study nurses, study coordinator, head of local laboratory, pharmacist, radiologist, support PI. So all these we can say it's a trial site team. And then the investigational products maintain records of delivery to the trial site, inventory, drug accountability log, usage by the subject and amount returned, alternative disposal of unused product. Records must include dates, quantities, batch, serial numbers, expiration dates, codes assigned to the trial subjects, must be stored as specified by sponsor, temperature log, and used according to the approved protocol. Explain correct use to the subjects. Okay, so these should be happen in the investigational products. We should maintain the records of these things and must be stored as specified by sponsor and uses according to the approved protocol. Then the randomization procedures and unblinding subject identification log only none by the investigator, and that is responsibility of the investigator. Examples, we have IXRS, which is known as interactive web and voice, or voice and web systematic response, or we can say response system technology for the clinical trial. And we have the subject screening and enrollment log. Each subject is assigned as a screening ID, date and version of the consent, eligibility for enrollment, reasons for ineligibility, and subject randomization ID. And what is it about the informed consent, which is so important? Informed in a timely manner if a new information is available, no correction or influencing of the subjects. So there is no influencing of the subjects, or there is no effect on the subjects. Completely voluntary participations. No waiving of legal rights. Should be direct, should be clear. No technical and understandable or ununderstandable language. The language should be clear, should be understandable. And also, before the contents, documentation in the medical. So we will discuss two things: the contents of the informed consent and also the documentation in the medical course. So these are 2 points that are so important. So the contents: the trial involves research, purpose of the trial, the treatment and the probability for random assignment, trial procedures including all the invasive procedures, subjects' responsibilities, experimental aspects of the trial, reasonably foreseeable risk or inconvenience to the subject, reasonably expected benefits. Let the subject know if there is no intended clinical benefit to the subject, alternative procedures or treatment available to the subject, compensation and the treatment available in case of a trial-related injury, anticipated prorated payment for participation in the trial, anticipated expenses for the participating in the trial, access to original medical records is granted, identifying information will kept confidential. That's mean it should be private. Contact information for further contact and the study duration. So all these are the content of the informed consent. And then the documentation in the medical record. The documentation in the medical record: identification of the study and the presenter's role, data and time, as date I mean here, or and time of the discussion, questions, concerns, verbalization of understanding by the subject. That exactly what is should be the documentation in the medical record. And then we will talk about the source data and the trial records. It should be attributable, legal, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. So we say ALUCA. So A, attributable; L, legal; contemporaneous; C, O, original; and A, accurate. Changes must be traceable, signed, and not obscuring original entry. And we have the safety reporting: immediate reporting of all the serious adverse events to the sponsor, reporting of adverse events or laboratory abnormalities to the sponsor, supplying sponsors and IRB/IEC with the requested additional information in case of death, autopsy reports, terminal medical reports. Adverse events not necessarily related to the treatment. Serious adverse events. What they are: the serious adverse events not necessarily related to the treatment, life-threatening or lethal, requires hospitalization, persistence or significant disability or incapacity, congenital abnormality, birth defect. So these are what we call them the serious adverse events. But the serious adverse drug reaction related to the drug, life-threatening or lethal, requires hospitalization, persistence or significant disability or incapacity, congenital abnormality or birth defect. unexpected adverse drug reaction related to the drug, severity or nature not consistent with the applicable product information. Suspected unexpected severe adverse reaction, which they are subdivided into severe or non-severe. If it's related, we can say the serious adverse drug reaction or suspected unexpected serious adverse reaction. So these are, we can say, expected or unexpected. ADR non-severe, and we said that the ADR is, and also we have unrelated like severe serious adverse events or adverse events, which is non-severe. This what we call them is adverse drug reaction because it's non-severe. So pre-termination, premature termination or suspension of a trial, if we want just to terminate before the time that we conducted it, or we have a suspension in it, assure appropriate therapy and follow up for the subjects. Investigator needs to write an explanation for the termination or suspension of a trial for the IRB IEC and also for the sponsors if not priorly agreed with the sponsor. So first, he should write that explanation to the sponsors, and if the sponsor not agree with that, he can also check it to the IRB or IEC. Termination, suspensions of IRB IEC approval, notify the sponsors. If they are say okay, because they are above the sponsor, then he should notify also the sponsor. The importance of the project management. 85% of the clinical trials fail to retain enough patients. 80% of the clinical trials fail to finish on time. 50% of the sites enroll one or less patients. 40% of the budget goes towards recruitment. 30% of the patients drop out of the trial. We can say it's under the importance of the project management. Maybe we can say that the project management is reducing all these problems. The goals is possible benefits after completion of a project. Objectives, low level statement referring to tangible benefits, scope, methods used to achieve the goals or objective deliverable. SMART principle should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and on time. So the phases of the project management according to the ISO 690015, the first one is conception, and then initiation, and then planning, and then execution, or we can say conduct, and then monitoring, and then a close. So these are the phases of the project management. So we will start about the conception and initiation. We just do these things together: conception and initiation. Project idea examined for its benefits, decision making if the project can realistically be completed. And then the definition and the planning should be a project plan, project character, including the project scope, methods defined, resources and time calculated, everything it has a plan. And then launch or execution, resources, tasks are distributed and teams are informed. And then the conduct, project management compares the project status and the progress to the actual plan. Plan might need to be justified on adjusted and activables. And then the close, the tasks are completed and silent stakeholder approves outcome, highlights the project success and learns from project history. So cost distribution during the projects, we can say according to this, because it first conception, initiation, definition and the planning, launch, execution, conduct and close. So the cost of a change and the level of influence, and we see here is the brown line is the level of the influence. So the level of influence, it will be graded during the first steps of the project management, and the cost of a change, it will be high in the last step of the management, And also accumulated effort and the cost, it will be high also in the last um, steps. So in the last step, the cost of the change will be high, accumulated effort and the cost will be high in the last step of the project management or the phases of the project management. But the level of influence, it will be high during the first steps or the first phases of the project management. Risk management, according to the ISO 31000, effect of uncertainty on objects, increase the chance of a project is success. Risk equals probability dot loss or multiply by loss. Treatment, avoidance, reduction, mitigation, sharing, outsourcing or insurance, retention, accept, and budgeting. So risk management and planning, risk identification, risk analysis, qualitative and quantity, risk response planning, risk monitoring and control. These are the steps. And then the risk identification, like list of the potential risk, because the question is how the risk identification can be happen by list of the potential risk, how the risk analysis can be happen by rating and periodizing the risk, like rating the risk, who is the big risk, who is the risk is will be like with rating on all these things. Risk response and the planning, risk avoidance, contingency planning, and then risk monitoring and control, risk assessment if it's gone, if it's not, like this. Okay, so the first one is risk identification, brainstorming, checklist, interviewing, SWOT analysis, like S strength, W weakens, O opportunities, T threats, deeply technique, and diagramming technique. Failure mode and effect analysis, which is known as FMEA, impact multiply, probability multiply, detection, it equals the risk value. The project stakeholder management, it's identification of a stakeholder management and control of a stakeholder engagement, like unaware, persistence, neutral, supportive, and leading. Stakeholder register, engagement matrix, and communication plan. So we hear stakeholder names, their title, their role, their power, their interest, their requirement. Like for example, the security manager should be finished implement GDPR compliant checkouts by quarter, and then if it's developer, then it's responsible for the security certificates, and that's mean what we need from them. And concerns, delays due to the upcoming fiscal year, mitigating the data, and all this stuff. These are what we call them as a project stakeholder management. And again, like these are the stakeholder names: unaware, resistance, neutral, supportive, and leading. And again, these are the examples of stakeholders management. Then we have a chart, which is known as a Gantt chart, varying linkages between the predecessors and successors. Critical path timeline for the shortest overall time. Delaying this on a critical path will delay the project. So we should know what is a critical path, what is not. Okay. So the next step, it will be about the next lecture. I will discuss the Gantt chart, and we completing also the project managers, and we know the matrix and other things. So I hope I understand anything from today, and waiting for the next lecture. Thank you so much for listening.